Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? Saints open up minicamp on Tuesday. Katherine Terrell, ESPN.com, good enough to join us to recap OTAs and preview minicamp. Kat, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Great piece up at ESPN.com, very encompassing about your previewing this minicamp. Let me begin with maybe an easy one. For people who hear OTAs minicamp, what are the difference or the primary differences between OTAs like last week and minicamp this week?
Honestly, really the only difference is that minicamp is mandatory, so players could get fined for not showing up. You can't fine a player for not showing up to OTAs, which is why you typically see players not in OTAs more than you would see them not in minicamp. So if there's missing players this week, it would be a much bigger deal. And besides that, media gets access all 3 days instead of just one of the 3 days. So, that's the big difference for me.
And obviously we'll get much more coverage, which is awesome. And this is obviously a point on the calendar where you look at contract designations post-June 1. There's been a lot of talk about Marshon Lattimore primarily, but would you expect any other roster movement coming or going now that we're post-June 1 deadline?
No, not right now. I think if anything was to happen, it would be in training camp if they made any surprise cuts. But, the only real big thing to still be looking at, just like you said, is Marshon Lattimore. And if they trade him, it kind of looks like that's not going to happen now, but it's the deadline to, I guess, make it happen. And basically, for those who aren't contract nerds like me, the date is only meaningful because it makes it so that the player's salary cap hit is less if you want to cut or trade them. Sometimes it's hard to part ways with a player simply because of the way their contract is structured. And then once you get past this date, it kind of makes it easier.
Let me just stick with the cornerbacks. I know everyone's talking about line and quarterback, but let me just stick with cornerbacks for a second. Based on what you've seen, and Kool-Aid McKinstry hasn't been out there, what have we learned, if anything, about the cornerbacks in the secondary room so far?
Well, I think we're going to learn a lot more about them this week. I think we're going to see a little more of Kool-Aid. Well, I guess we haven't seen anything yet. We're hopefully going to see Lattimore. But, I don't really know. I think that we learned a lot at the end of last season, and that's that they can be very successful without Lattimore, which probably feeds into, are they going to trade him or not? But I think it's a very good cornerback room, with or without him. I think Paulson Adebo is very talented. I think Avonte Taylor is very talented. There was a play the other day near the goal line. Derek Carr had a pass tipped at the line and then tipped again by Avonte Taylor into the hands of Demario Davis for an interception. I thought it was a great play. I was talking to the cornerbacks coach later, and he was saying, those are the things that we're trying to teach, and we want more of those. So I would think that there would be a big emphasis, again, on turnovers this year, like there was last year.
Katherine Terrell's with us, ESPN.com. She's on Twitter at Kat_Terrell. Give her a follow. All right, let's talk about the offensive line. Is there any update, or when might we expect an update on Ryan Ramczyk?
I think they're going to keep that as quiet as possible until training camp. Last time we asked Dennis Allen about it, he said, we wouldn't expect him at the beginning of training camp. But, as we get closer, I think you do have to talk about, are they going to see him at training camp at all? Is he going to play at all? And it really kind of looks like they're preparing to not have him. When we were talking to Dennis Allen last week, he was talking about leadership on the offensive line. I think he was saying Eric McCoy, Cesar Ruiz, and he didn't say Ryan Ramczyk as a team leader. And that's not a knock against Ramczyk. I think just in their mind and mentally, they're kind of preparing for 2024 without him. But, that's just speculation on my part.
We've seen Nick Saldiveri get first-team reps at left guard. Do you think this is just, it's early enough in the preseason, we're not even in camp yet, he's just getting reps to see how it works? Or is this like a legit thing where they feel like he is the guy at left guard now?
I don't know if they think he's the guy yet, but I do know that from all the times we talked to Dennis Allen, Mickey Loomis, whoever throughout the spring, his name kept coming up by them. It wasn't by us. It was them bringing it up. And so I do think that they think a lot of him, even though, we haven't seen a lot of him because last year he didn't play and also he was dealing with some injuries. But I think their perspective is probably different from ours. So, that definitely could be a real thing. I think it's so hard to talk about the offensive line and how they're progressing, as you know, until they get pads on. So, there's all this talk about how Trevor Penning will succeed or not succeed this year. And I feel like until the last week in July, the first week in August, we're probably not going to have a great grasp on it other than who's with the ones and who's with the twos.
It's completely right. It's almost impossible to ask questions about offensive and defensive line when there's no pads on. But one more follow-up. I think we all know the stories like with Fuanga at left and Penning at right. But they did add some veterans. For any reason, good, bad, or that you've seen or spoken to people around the Saints, have any of those veterans seemed to stand out yet?
No, because the one that you'll be looking at the most is Ali Udo, and he's been hurt, and I think kind of working his way back in. So out of the veterans they've added, that's the guy that I would be kind of intrigued to see what he can do because he can play multiple positions, and I think Dennis Allen also talked about that the other day, and he has experience. So he's probably someone that's going to fight for a lot of playing time when he gets healthy. And again, some of that is, I think, really going to depend on Trevor Penning and how willing they are to keep, I guess, pushing this. I don't think they want to give up on Penning yet. Obviously, they're trying him at a different position, but I am curious to see if that lasts, through training camp into the season, or if he doesn't have a great start to camp, if they kind of move on and push him in the background. I think it'll be interesting to watch, pads or no pads.
She's on Twitter at @Kat_Terrell. A couple more for you, Kat. What are you going to be looking for with the quarterbacks in minicamp the next 3 days?
Well, I think Jake Haener, he's a guy I mentioned, and in that preview you were talking about. I think that he has really looked good so far. He's had a great start. I'm going to kind of be watching to see if that is kind of consistent, the consistent story. Because I think Spencer Rattler has not had a great start to OTAs, and yet you can't overhype or underhype the quarterbacks too much at this point because I think it's a little unfair because Rattler, is a rookie and Haener has 1 year of experience. But I'm going to be watching that competition in minicamp and all summer because I'm so intrigued to see what they do with it. I think it's so rare that teams have two young back-to-back draft picks like this competing against each other. And, what's the ultimate outcome? Do all three of them stay on the roster? And I say three. I know there's 4 quarterbacks, but I feel like really anyone's going to be talking about 3 quarterbacks for the rest of the summer.
Yeah, I'm okay with the Nathan Peterman slander here. That's perfectly fine. Yeah, this is a safe space.
He threw an interception the other day. His one pass was an interception. We all kind of laughed.
I was like, yeah, poor guy. You don't have a shot. Why don't you just drop your pads off on the way out? Hey, before you go, anything else that you would say that you're intrigued to watch over these next 3 days?
Well, I know we talked a little cornerbacks, but honestly, I am very intrigued to see how they handle the Lattimore situation. I think a little bit the same for Alvin Kamara. It's a different situation, but, those are 2 guys that didn't show up to OTAs, and that's been the case for the past at least 3 off seasons. And, they're installing a new offensive system, and there's a lot of stuff going on. So, it's their right not to go to OTAs, but when almost every other person is there, I think it definitely is something that is going to draw attention for better or for worse. So I'm interested to see and hear from them. And then I always love watching the young wide receivers. That's always one of my favorite parts of, I guess, the off season and training camp. And one of the guys that I want to watch is Bub Means, their new draft pick, kind of to see how he responds and interacts with Derek Carr and things like that. And so cornerbacks, wide receivers, those are the two big ones. But defensive line, we kind of touched on. Same thing. Yeah, I know there's no pads, but there's a lot of players on that defensive line that have a lot of unrealized potential, and they're going to need that from them this year. So I'll be watching that too.
Kat Terrell, ESPN.com. Good stuff. We always appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.